Hi and welcome to Scaling JFrog Artifactory for Multi-Site Development webinar. So for audio quality purposes, everybody would be on mute and you can post your questions in the Q&A tab of the webinar. Towards the end of the webinar, we would be taking up the questions as when time permits. And if any of those questions remains unanswered, we are going to reply you back through our follow-up email. We have some other webinar series as well, and this is the first part of the enterprise webinar, and the second part will be happening next week. In the second part of the webinar, we would be taking up HA features with another product of JFrog, which is called as Mission Control, which is also the part of the enterprise license. And today we would be covering up topics like multi-site development, multi-push, and all the stuff. So I'm your speaker, Mansimran Singh, working as a solution engineer at JFrog, part of the solution engineering team, working with more than 3,000 customers, integrating Artifactory into their architectures. And the agenda for today is we would be covering very brief overview of Artifactory. Those of you who haven't used Artifactory or used at the very basic level are welcome to join Introduction to Artifactory webinar, which is conducted the very first Tuesday of every month. And then we are going to talk about today's topic, which is scale. We would start with the problems of scaling, namely locality, high availability, and storage limitations. And of course, towards the end of the webinar, we would be also talking about the storage limitations and how Artifactory addresses that pain as well with the help of the file sharding feature. Now, everybody is well versed with this diagram, and almost every organization has the two aspects working over there, one as the developers and one as the operations. And today this term is called as DevOps. Now let's talk about the universal nature of Artifactory. Here's the list of the technologies which Artifactory supports: the package managers, dependency managers. You can see here that Artifactory works both for the development and for the operations. On the development side, there is of course Java, .NET, NPM, Bower, Python, Ruby, and what's not. But Artifactory can also be used on the operational side of the things for hosting and working with packages of Debian, of RPM, Vagrant images, and of course Docker images as well. Let me go to the next slide. So just like every organization, everything starts with the development teams writing the new code. So when they write the new code, they basically add the new dependencies that the binary repository or artifact repository cares about. And that can be a new dependency in the form of form.xml, Gradle script, ivxml, gem config file, or any kind of dependency. Of course, before they commit the code, they try to run the build locally, and the dependency managers will try to resolve the dependency. And once the tool is configured correctly, of course, the resolution will be attempted from Artifactory. If this dependency is new and was never used in the organization or against this Artifactory instance, then Artifactory will try to resolve the dependencies from the remote repositories like JCenter or Maven Central for Java, NPM Registry, Docker Hub, NuGet Gallery, etc., etc. Once those dependencies are resolved and cached in the Artifactory, the build will eventually successfully succeed, and the developer will be ready to commit the changes to the source control. Once the changes are committed to the source control, in the next step, the continuous integration server kicks in. Now, the continuous integration server discovers the changes in the version control by polling, of course, and takes the changes and tries to run the exact same build that the developer was running on their machine. And this time, their CS server will actually look the dependencies inside Artifactory and nowhere else. Of course, the good news is that those dependencies will be found instantly because they were already pre-cached by the developer when the developer had run the local build. And now the dependencies are found, the build is successful. When the build is successful, the CA server will deploy the artifacts back into the Artifactory. And this is the basic advantage of the Artifactory. You can basically resolve the dependencies from it, and you can also publish the results back into the Artifactory. Apart from the published modules, Artifactory also publishes what we call as build of material. This build of material is extremely important because it contains the metadata about the build. For example, what are the published modules? What are the dependencies associated with the published modules? What are the environment variables? What are the system variables? And this becomes very important when you have to reproduce the build. Now, reproducibility of the build is also a very important feature because it often happens that you are working on something and it doesn't work correctly, but you don't have the metadata associated with it in order to reproduce it. And Artifactory again resolves this pain over here. Another source of the metadata which might be equally important is the quality assurance data. For example, tools like Selenium, Cucumber, etc. They also can contribute the data towards the testing of the artifacts. And all this will be collected inside Artifactory as well. In the next step, artifacts that need to go to the production will be selected from all the artifacts that were ever built, and here we have two different ways to take the artifacts to production. And that depends, of course, on the type of the software you build. Well, if your software is more like SaaS or service-based, that is deployable to your servers, to like Chef, Puppet, Ansible, Vagrant, etc., etc., they're going to kick in and get the artifacts from the Artifactory. And if your software is something more like downloadable, then of course distribution platform like Bintray would be a better choice. Now Bintray, as you can see in the picture, is a distribution platform and it's behind CDN. So the customers or your own employees of the organization which are sitting at the remote locations and doesn't have the good connectivity to your servers in order to download the binaries, Bintray can be very, very useful tool for them. And of course, with the integration between Artifactory and Bintray, they work closely together, and whatever you push to Artifactory, that can be synced to Bintray as well. Now, when we are talking about the binaries, this slide becomes very important. And the reason is that why there is tools like repository managers today, and why we have to use these tools when the scaling of the binaries is happening. In order to understand this, let's go back a decade and try to understand how many binaries were being produced at that time and how the explosion happened during this decade. So if you go to the 2000 era and everything was working with the agile development, so builds were happening approximately once a month or maybe twice a month. So the binaries which were getting produced were still manageable. And then the era of the CI/CD came in, and the explosion started to happen in this era. And you can see right from the diagram that as compared to the agile era, the number of the binaries were getting double or quadruple. And then suddenly the DevOps came into the picture, and now you have the binaries for the entire environment, and that needs to be stored into the repository manager. And then after this, the microservices came in, which were the breaking of the monolithic code to the microservices, and towards 2016 or from the last 2-3 years, the Docker came into the picture, and the explosion is happening even today as well. We have so many artifacts to manage, we have so many builds to manage that we definitely need tools like Artifactory in order to manage this scale as well as this explosion and the metadata also associated with these binaries as well. And now when we're talking about the metadata, this becomes really important in today's age, because when you have millions and millions of artifacts, you actually need to understand what is deployed where. And if I need to trace a binary to the source, how would I do that? And among millions of the artifacts, if I want to pick up the right one, how can I pick the right ones as well? So Artifactory again works very well with this metadata, and some of the metadata is automatically captured when I was telling you about the build materials. That's what we call as build info, and this is automatically being captured. Apart from the automatic capturization of the data, you can also add the metadata in terms of, for example, who tested this artifact, what were the results, what are the performance issues, what are the results of the smoke testing, what are the results of the sanity testing. You can also add the data, for example, what are the platforms? Is it a Linux build, it is a Windows build, or what? And you can also add the architecture as well. For example, it's a 32-bit, it's a 64-bit, or what? And when we have added all this metadata, now we have to consume this metadata as well. And of course, over here, Artifactory again comes to your help in the form of AQL. That's called as Artifactory Query Language. And Artifactory Query Language is a fully blown query language which translates into the SQL queries. And since all this metadata is stored in the database, your results becomes much faster because everything is written in the parameterized form. Now, since we are talking about this explosion, we are talking about the quantity, and somebody has rightly said that the quantity has a quality of its own. And from the slide, you can see that one of our customers, they have provided us the data, and they had more than 60 terabytes of the data, and this is from last year. Today, they have crossed more than 100 terabytes of the data. They have more than 70 million artifacts. Some of them are as huge as 9 gigs. They have more than 200 repositories. On the right-hand side, you can see the number of the downloads which are happening, the number of the SQL queries which are running, the number of the IO operations which are running, and they have 5 global centers with 43,000 artifacts which are being replicated each day. And when we are talking about this data, we need to understand that every organization today is a software organization, irrespective of what their primary business is. For example, you can count any telecom, and out of the 10 telecoms, largest telecoms, 7 are using Artifactory. When you talk about the largest financial institutions, 7 out of 10 of them are using Artifactory. And when you talk about the internet and software companies, of course, 8 of the 10 companies are using this tool to manage their finances. When huge organizations have to manage this much data, of course, there are some challenges as well. And these challenges come in the form of distributed teams. None of these companies have a single data center. Even if you talk about JFrog, we have 3 development centers, and we are managing 3 teams or 3 distributed teams as well. Now, another challenge is, of course, high availability pipelines. What if you're working on something which is very critical and one of the nodes goes down, your admin comes up and he needs to fix something and he needs to bring it up, it takes some time, and during all this process, your builds are lagging behind, and this is a huge disadvantage as well. And when we talk about the storage, since we were talking about terabytes and terabytes of the data, millions and millions of artifacts, we need to scale the storage as well. And apart from all these things, we also need to manage and monitor all this data, all these instances as well. Now let's talk about these things in detail. The very first, of course, is the distributed teams. Now when we talk about the multiple development centers, we have big problem of network latency. If you ever develop remotely, you know exactly what I'm talking about. And of course, this is something which cannot work in the huge organizations. So for that, the simplest solution is configuring the remote repositories of each other. India location will proxy the location in the United States, and United States will work as a proxy for the India location. And of course, that looks very simple and it's quite understandable. It works with any Artifactory license, but there are still some problems with it. We need to provide each and every team with their own local Artifactory instance, which is great. The only question is how they should transfer the artifact from one repo to another. And there are a couple of ways to achieve that as well. The simplest solution is configuring the remote repositories of each other. As I said, the India location will proxy the location in the United States and vice versa. Now, what are the benefits of this? Of course, it works with any Artifactory license. You have the feature of Smart Remote Repo, which provides additional features. The only drawback is it's the lazy by nature, meaning that you actually have to tell the remote location that this is the artifact I need. Until and unless that doesn't exist over there, you cannot basically download that artifact. Now, different versions of the same artifact appear in the local and remote repositories. This also complicates the resolution as well. So you have another solution between push and pull replications. The benefit is, of course, it's an eager proxy. Remote repositories are populated in advance. Push replications are event-driven. Just when a CRUD activity happens on our repository, at that very moment only the artifacts are replicated to the other side. It supports any topology. You can set up the start topology, you can set up a mesh topology, you can set up a full mesh topology, and of course, push applications can push to the local repositories only. In order to better understand this, let's go through the demo. So in the demo, we would be, sorry about that, my slide is frozen. So let me go to the, oops, it went far ahead. So we were here, and now we need to talk about the multi-push replication, how that's configured, and I will be going through a demo in which I'm going to publish an artifact at one site, and it's going to be replicated to 2 other sites instantaneously. So for that, let me jump into Artifactory. So you can see that this is the first Artifactory instance, this is the second Artifactory instance, and this is my third Artifactory instance. Now, in my first Artifactory instance, if I go into the repository which I set up for this demo is test multi-push. As you can see, I have nothing in this repository, and if I go into the other locations, if I search for the same repository, I have nothing over here as well. The artifact count is again 0. And if I go to my third location, if I again search the same repository, you can see the artifact count is 0 over here as well. Now, as I said, I'm going to push an artifact over here. Sorry about that. So I'm just dropping a package, a WAR file. And as soon as I deployed a WAR file, it automatically picks up details, for example, what its gap coordinates are, what type of file it is. And as soon as I push deploy, it's pushed into this location. And if I go to the logs, so you can see that successfully creating the folder on another locations, it has been pushed, it has been deployed to both the locations as well. And if I just go over here, if I just refresh this repository, so you can see that artifacts are being pushed over here as well. And if I go into my third location, if I just refresh this, the artifact is replicated over here as well. And the way it's done, it's very, very easy. If I go into the configuration of the repositories, since push replication works only on the local repositories, you can see in the replications tab, I have provided 2 locations. And if you want to add any third location, you can add the location by just giving its URL, the username and password, which is having the credentials to deploy the artifact. That's it. That's the only thing you have to do. And I was explaining about the event-based replication. Now, this example which we had gone through was an example of event-based replication, because as soon as I pushed an artifact, it was replicated at that very moment to the other site as well. If by any chance, for some reason, the artifact is not replicated at that very event, it's gonna be replicated as per the cron job as well. So you can provide a cron job which is called as a scheduled replication. It's the artifacts which were not replicated for the event-based replication, they are gonna be taken care of in the scheduled replication as well. And scheduled replication is always mandatory and event-based is optional. Another good feature is you can also delete the syncs as well. Sorry, you can also sync delete as well. And as soon as an artifact is deleted from one repo, it would be deleted from the other sites as well. So let me go ahead and delete the same artifact which we had pushed just minutes back. So that was the same artifact. Let me delete it. And I'm just deleting the complete folder structure as well, in order to show you that the count is 0 again. And if I go back into the logs, it's showing that it's going to delete the package onto my other locations as well. And now if I go into my other location, Again, if I just refresh this, so you can see the count is 0 over here. And if I just refresh this one, so you can see the count is 0 over here as well. So this is the way you can basically synchronize your artifacts, addition as well as the deletion of artifacts. Now this was a very, very simple case. But what if you want to have a full mesh topology? For example, I have the 3 sites and I want all the artifacts in all the 3 sites to be available in each and every site, so that developers doesn't need to send even an email to the other counterparts. Hey, the thing which you were working on, even I need the same artifact or I need the same binary, but it's not available at my site. Can you please push it and all this stuff? All these things can happen in an automated way. And this, as I said, that this is very, very easy to set up. You can also set up the replications with the help of the REST APIs. You can also set up the replications with the help of the machine control, which we are going to cover up in the next webinar. And you can also set up the replication with the UI, which we had shown you over here. Great. Artifacts are being replicated. Now let me go back. So this was about the replication, and now let's talk about the reliable pipelines. Now, as I was explaining you, every company is a software company. You take the largest transportation company, but they are a software company behind the scenes, and I'm talking about Uber. You talk about the largest housing company, but they are a software company behind the scenes, and I'm talking about Airbnb. So as I said, every company is a software company these days. And in order to stay ahead in this competition, they have to release fast or die. And this is what our tagline as well. Faster builds are a very important criteria these days. Even a minute of delay can cause a lot of problems. And development pipelines are as important as the production pipelines. Because if the developments are not working correctly, the production is not going to work correctly. So in order to work on this, you can set up the secured cluster HA Docker registries, and you can set up the multiple Docker repositories inside Artifactory. They would be very safe. It's having very tight security model. And as somebody has rightly said, that no one uses Docker and nothing else. Docker is used to ship something. So when Docker is used to ship something, you definitely need a good repository where you can store the Docker images, because you're not just shipping one thing, you are shipping many, many things. And Artifactory serves as a Docker registry with high availability, with a powerful security model, with the integration with the enterprise systems, and of course, it works with all the modern tools and platforms available in the market as well. Now, what it takes to make an Artifactory high availability environment? It's very simple. It only consists of 3 parts: file storage, where you would be storing your binaries, a database, which can also be used as a file store, but it's primarily used to store the metadata, and of course, the Artifactory system. Now, this is a very, very simple architecture where you have a 3-node cluster, one primary, 2 secondary, and you have the load balancer in front of them. And behind the scenes, you have the NFS in order to store the binaries, and a database to store the metadata. Now, let's go ahead and do a small demonstration of how HA works. Since it's an active cluster, meaning that if one of the nodes goes down, your users and your build processes should not be impacted, and you should see that in the demo as well. So let me show you the architecture which I'm using. So this is a high availability setup. And if I go to the high availability, you can see that I am running one member as primary and there is a secondary member. They both are running right now. And here are the logs as well. I can modify, zoom in the logs that you can clearly see them. So one of the logs is for the primary and one of the logs is for the secondary. Since both of them are running perfectly fine, and I'm going to pull up a Docker image from this particular instance And if that particular image is not there, it's going to pull up the image from the remote repository and it's going to cache that image as well. So let me go ahead and pull that image. So you can see it started pulling the image. And if I go over here, you can see Artifactory started the pulling the image. Now let me stop this particular Artifactory instance. And what's going to do is that it's going to switch over to the another instance that's the secondary. So you can see as soon as this instance is switched off, the other instance kicks in. And if I go back to the pulling, the download is still happening. It's not at all impacted in any way. And this is the way your HA architecture works as well. Now, if I go back, you can see this Artifactory instance is completely stopped, but your pulling up of your Docker image is still going on. Nothing is happening. But if I go back into my Artifactory, and if I just refresh this, and if I just log in back, you can see one of the members is not running. And this is how HA works. And this was a very, very classic example where even a Docker image, any of layers is not affected by stopping one of the instance. The another instance is still running. And if I bring back the instance at any point of time, on the other side, you would be able to see that it's going to show you that another member has been added to the cluster. Let me bring back the logs as well. So it's picking up each and everything what it missed during this time. And now you can see found one other HA member as well, and this is added to the cluster. So everything is done in an automated way. As an admin, you need not to worry that when I bring another node in the cluster, do I need to do any configuration? Do I reload the packages and all the stuff? Everything is going to be happening automatically. When one of the node goes down, the failover automatically happens. When the node comes up, it's automatically added to the cluster, and they both started working again as well. And if I go into the Artifactory and show you the image which we just pulled, if I go into the repository, Docker dev local, in the library, no, it's not in the library. Oh, it's in the remote. Sorry, because we pulled up the image. So if you go to the cache, if you go to the library, if you go into the image, so you are able to see all the layers of that particular image, and you would be able to see the information about it. And if I go into the properties, I can see some automatic metadata which is being captured. What's the tag of that particular file? What's the repo name where it's stored? What's the SHA-256 over there as well? And if I talk about the permissions, you're able to see there is an extensive permission model. It's a very, very tight security model where you specify the groups and users who can use this particular image according to what level they can go. They have the read permission, they have the deploy and cache permission, they have the delete permission. They also have the annotate permission, which means we can add the properties over here. If they don't have this permission, we cannot basically add the properties. And in the general tab, you would be able to see all the other information as well for this particular repo, as well as this particular Docker image as well. Now, this was a very, very easy thing to do. And as we had gone through that, if you pull up an image, it's cached. Now, what if I want to push the image back into the Artifactory? Again, this is very, very easy. Now, I just need to, instead of pull, I just need to do the push. Since all the layers were existing in the Artifactory and the checksum based storage, it clearly says that the image is existing. The only thing is that it needs to transfer the image to the local repository. And if I just go into the Docker local 2, and over here, I just refresh this. And if you can see the WordPress image, and over here, you would be able to see the same image which we had just pushed right now. And in the Docker info tab, you would be able to see the information about each and every layer over here as well, with all the other information, with the permissions, with the general tab. And you can also attach the properties over here. And you can see the properties in the remote repository and the properties in the local repositories are entirely different. So you can tweak these images according to the user needs. You can give the permissions to the local repository only to the specified user. You can give some guidelines, and then with the help of the properties, you can also tell them, hey, this particular Docker image is only for the production. So I can say image production ready. And I can put the same tag into the another repo, which I would say the image is only for the development or only for the QA. This way, your developers, your production artifacts, your QA artifacts would be entirely in the different repositories. But because of the checksum based storage, your storage would also not be impacted in any way. Great, H is working perfectly fine, multi-push is working perfectly fine. We had gone through the demo. Now let's go to the leftover topics. Now let's talk about the scalable storage. And in order to explain the scalable storage, we need to talk the same thing about the age of the binaries. And I was explaining you that today we have the millions and millions of artifacts, and especially with the Docker, it becomes really important because whatever is going inside the Docker, that thing also needs to get managed. And for that, sometimes your hard drive is not enough. Artifactory works great with the network attached storage, that's NAS, and in fact, it's a requirement for the HA as well. But even the NAS is not enough sometimes. So you have the option of the cloud-based storage, for example, S3, which offers unlimited storage scalability, and Amazon S3 compatible storage is also there. You can store your binaries in the S3 or another popular alternatives like OpenStack, Swift. They also provide S3 adapter and Swift 3. The only problem is the consistency. So everybody knows that Amazon S3 is not immediate consistent, it's eventually consistent. In order to make this immediately consistent, we need to put up a small NFS in front of your S3, so that way all your artifacts become immediate consistent for the other nodes. But in the future, you would be also able to get rid of the NFS requirement, and you can directly use your S3 storage as well. Another important feature is sharding. Now, sometimes the cloud-based storage is not an option for some of the organizations. They are very, very strict about the security model which they follow over there. So they want something where they can scale the storage inside the organization. And when I say they have to scale the storage inside the organization, what basically it means is that they want the same reliability, they want the scalability, they also want the optimization, and the way it can be achieved is with this architecture. It's a very, very simple thing. You can see we have the file stored, but behind the scenes, we have the multiple mounts of the NFS or any other storage. And Artifactory basically provides a sharding binary provider that lets you manage your binaries in a sharded file store. A sharded file store is the one that is implemented on a number of physical mounts, which we call as M in this particular example, which stores the binary object. And you can have the redundancy factor, which is called as R, and R is equal to 2 and mount is equal to 3, and R is always less than equal to M. Now, in order to better understand this example, you have the copy of each and every artifact, and they are distributed among the multiple mounts. So that in case if one of the mount goes down, your artifact is still available for your Artifactory. and we have depicted this in the form of the circles and the squares and the triangles. You can consider these circle, triangle, and the square as an artifact. Now you just pick any artifact, for example, square. If mount 1 goes down, it's still available in the mount 2. You can pick up triangle. The triangle is available in mount 2 and mount 3. So for example, if mount 2 goes down, your artifact is still available in the mount 2. So this is the way you can have the reliability, you can have the scalability, and since because of the checksum-based storage, you still have the optimizations being achieved over there as well. This was the features about HA. This was the features about the enterprise packs which Artifactory offers you. Because of the time constraints, there we cannot show you all the other features as well, but there are many other features. For example, you can control all this information with the help of mission control, which sits on top of your global Artifactory instances, where you can create the multiple users, repositories, configurations, replications, and all this stuff, not just going to the Artifactory instance, but controlling them through a single URL, and all this is applied to your multiple Artifactory instances, irrespective of the number. You can have this applied to 10, 20, 30, 40, and you can simply carry and go on. You can also learn more about our webinars. We have the webinars on each and every Tuesday, which are we doing today as well. So the very first Tuesday, we do a webinar to the introduction to Artifactory. The very basic users of Artifactory can join that webinar, and we cover up the topics: how you can set up an Artifactory instance, how you can set up the repositories, what is the concept behind the local, remote, and virtual repositories. And in the second part of the Tuesday series, we have the Pro webinar, where we show the automations around the properties, around AQL, and of course the third webinar which we did today, that was all about the HA features, enterprise features. But we have introduced some new webinars which is happening on Thursdays, and this is what we call as Thursdays Lunch and Learn. So we have some advanced topics in terms of using Artifactory with some other tools as well, and some designing a complete ecosystem, how to secure the artifacts, how to scan the artifacts for the security vulnerabilities, for the licensing compliance issues, and all the stuff. And of course, we have some special webinars on some special topics which we do with our partners. For example, integrating with Aqua and White Source for the X-ray, integrating Artifactory with Sumo Logic for your logging mechanism, and of course, there are some other relevant topics as well. So this was all about the webinar. It's time for picking up your question and answers. Please feel free to put them in the QA tab, and I'm just going to take up these questions right now. So I'm still waiting for the questions to come in. Okay, so I got one of the questions is that, can we have, what is the limit for multiple Artifactory instances in the HA? So there is absolutely no limit. It all depends upon the load you are having in the organization, about the number of users, about the number of content builds. If you are scaling, you can anytime add a new node in the HA architecture. That's not a difficult job to do. You just need to provide the configuration parameters. You can anytime add a node to the cluster, or you can anytime delete a node from the cluster. The minimum requirement is 2, which I had shown you as well. Otherwise, there is no limit at all. Okay. So I'm waiting for some other questions to jump in. Okay, so another question is there, can we configure all this programmatically? Yes, the REST APIs are available for you. You can do this all with the help of the REST APIs. You can set up the users, repositories, even the replication. You can provide the from-based parameters, event-based replication, and the checkboxes for the syncing, deletes, and all this stuff. All this available with the help of the REST APIs as well. Okay, some more questions. Okay, another question. So is multi-push available for a specific technology, or it's available for all the technologies which is supported inside Artifactory? Yes, it's available for all the technologies which is supported inside Artifactory. You can replicate the Docker images, you can replicate the Maven artifacts, you can replicate the Python artifacts, you can replicate the Ruby artifacts. basically each and every repository is having the feature of replication. And just for your reference, replication is available in two ways. One is the push replication, one is the pull replication. In terms of pushing, artifacts are pushed to the other location. In terms of pulling, the artifacts are pulled from the other location. And based upon the topology inside your organization, you can have a mixture of push and pull. And for this, there is a great white paper which is available on our website. You can anytime go to jfrog.com and you can search for multi-site development white paper. And it shows that if you're having a star topology, what is the best recommended way? If you're having a mesh topology, what is the best recommended way? You can also set up a full mesh topology as well. Okay, so another question. Somebody requested me to show you the replication, how you set up a replication. Okay, not an issue. I can show you how it's set up. So, by the way, this question is from Gillies. He wants to say that I want to see one more time how you set up the replication. I go into my Artifactory instance. I just log in. I just go into the admin repository, which I want to replicate to other instances. So this is the one which I created. After going inside the configuration, there is a tab called as replication. Inside the replication, you have to define the multiple Artifactory instances where you want to replicate the artifact. If you want to add a new artifact, just click on the new button and provide the details. I can have an existing one for you. So you can have the parameters like this: your Artifactory instance name / the repository name, provide a username and password. If you want to sync the deletes, check the checkbox. Otherwise, it's up to you. You also can sync the artifact properties as well. Just test the connection. If it is successful, you're good to go with the replication. And just click save. And as now every artifact is pushed inside the test multi-push repository, the same would be replicated to the other sites as well. You can provide the cron-based expression over here. It's automatically going to detect when the next replication is going to happen. And for the event-based replication, you just need to check this checkbox. I hope this helps. Another question. Is it ideal to always have R is equal to m-1 for sharding? Would sharding help in reducing the size of the volume and instead distribute it over multiple smaller volumes? Yes, you're correct. It basically helps you to distribute the load over the multiple smaller volumes, and at the same time, it provides the redundancy as well, so that if one of your mounts goes down, you still have the reliability that the Artifactory is still going to give you the same requested artifact which you have requested him to deliver. And another feature is you can basically define the read and write strategy with the different algorithms with the different data structures which Artifactory provides for you. One is simply the percentage free allocation, the amount which is having the maximum storage available, the artifact goes to that. You can also go to our wiki.jfrog.com in order to have the more information about sharding. So you just search for sharding, and it's going to show you the information which I have explained you over here. And as I said that you have the different ways of defining what sort of strategy you want to apply. There is very, very detailed documentation available for that. And you basically have the read and write behaviors over here. You have the round robin writing behavior. You have the free space or the percentage free space. All these three algorithms are available for you to write the artifacts as well. Regarding the redundancy, it's by default R is equal to 1, but as a best practice and a best recommendation, never ever go for R is equal to 1. Always go for R is equal to at least m-1, if not equal to. However, you can go to the equal as well. Okay, waiting for some more questions. So seems all the questions have been answered, but you feel free to ask us any of your doubts in the future webinars. You can also send the questions to us at webinars@jfrog.com, and one of our solution engineers would reply you with answers to that particular question. And if you want to try out the Artifactory HA, if you're using the Pro, just get in contact with our sales rep, and they are going to provide you the details on how you can set up the HA, how you can basically define the active-active clustering, and how you can basically scale to the other locations, and how you can set up the topologies like star, mesh, and full mesh. Also, if you're more interested in talking about the mission control, I'm going to do a mission control webinar next week, where I will be showing you how all these things can be done programmatically, and how you can track what's going inside, what's going outside, how you can track the monitoring of the Artifactory instances as well. Great. So far, we have gone through all the questions, and here's the time to say goodbye. Thank you for joining us for this webinar. Have a nice day. Thank you.